less than half of that, maybe 3 point something percent. And the good news has been that rate of inflation, the expectation of the rate of inflation has been slowing down and going down. And because of that, there is a hope that we can continue to with our development effort in all the respective countries of both G20 and for us in ASEAN, the ASEAN countries.
Okay, thank you, Professor, for that. Now we want to talk more about probably one of the most exciting topics that are being discussed in the G20 forum, especially in the economic...
Hello.
Yes?
Hello.
Can you hear us?
I didn't... Yes, please, yeah.
Okay, I'll continue with the question. I just want to hear your points of view about the blockchain technology that are now being discussed in the economic and financial forums of the G20,
yes.
Not just the summit, but also the side events preluding the summit. I want to know your views on the technology, and do you agree on the creation of a CBDC, a central bank digital currency? And would that work in Indonesia? What do you think?
Okay. Well, any new technology is always also a disruption, which each country cannot afford not to adjust, right? But indeed, it is a new thing. And I guess the People's Bank of China is the only one who has been daring enough to use the digital central bank currency, which, even though it's still on trial, it seems to be working. Okay, I have not been discussing with a former colleague in Bank Indonesia, but I guess Bank Indonesia has been from the beginning try to understand the nitty-gritty of the blockchain, and my own view is that we cannot afford not in the end to adopt the blockchain, because that is a modern things which will make a lot of transaction much easier than what we are having right now. So we have to go to the direction, but of course now the issue is how fast can we adjust, and that maybe some countries take more time than the others, but I guess the direction has to go there. So answering your question, I myself, even though I cannot at the moment claiming that I'm expert in the blockchain technology, but I know that this is the future that we cannot afford to avoid. Without that, then we see that it's getting worse. You know, the latest things with the new billionaire young group was the so-called TFC or something like that, that, you know, almost like speculating on the Bitcoin things, but in the end it went bankrupt. And so that kind of story is sad, but you can't help it. I think the authority, monetary authority in this respect, has to just take that technology, try to understand it, and then implement maybe on stages. But to my understanding, we cannot avoid not to take that as part of the central banking operations for the future.
Last question, sir. In your opinion, what other aspects of the G20 member countries can do?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I lost your voice.
Hello, sir. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. So, sir, this is a last question. In your opinion,
Okay.
What other aspects of the G20 member countries can do to prevent a financial crisis in the future, sir?
Okay. Of course, we have to be careful on this new technology development. The crisis like what this Bitcoin things that I was just saying. I don't know. Maybe there will be another new means for speculation that will be coming out, because the pace of technological innovation in finance is tremendous. So we have to keep adjusting, but opening up our eyes and be ready to adjust with the new situation. I don't know that as China is the member, maybe China could share with the other countries the experience with making the central bank digital currency in practice. What the benefit and what are the costs, and can we also adopt that kind of thing? I guess that is how I view about the blockchain as well as the latest development on this digital finance means for national economic management. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time and expertise shared with our viewers today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. So, a bottom line is adaptability.
Yes, indeed. I think adapt or die is now the tagline for all of us. So from Professor Sudrajat, former governor of Bank BI, we now go back to Professor Dewi Fortuna, who's still here with us. Now, before we go back to our original question list, I would love to get your take on what Professor Sudrajat has said about the economic and financial agenda of the G20.
And also the new technology.
And the new technology that will be discussed.
How do you see that impacting probably the geopolitical?
That's why, one of his priorities is digital transformation.
Digital transformation.
Because digital transformation is not just about WhatsApp.
That's right. But also about the financial system.
But about the financial systems. And as we know, in fact, as you know, the pandemic has accelerated the online commerce, the e-commerce. But clearly, one of the issues is adapting to this new, like Bitcoin cryptocurrency, because we just read that one of the large companies exchange like FTX has gone
trillions
bust.
of rupiah in one day almost.
As this is not really my area, so I hesitate to say, but clearly you need to adapt, but you need to be careful as well. And the most important thing is you need to have capacity building. Because you cannot simply go blindly into these various changes without sufficient knowledge and understanding about the the risk and so on. And the most important thing is that, Indonesia is huge market, and we do not simply want to be consumers. So I think that Indonesia should also be a player in this respect. So so I think that's important. So at the end of the day, is education.
Interesting. So how do you think Indonesia benefits from all these changes about the situation economically, in technology, politically, geopolitically? How does Indonesia benefits from all this?
We benefit or we lose as everybody else, because we are very, very interconnected. In fact, we cannot say how Indonesia benefits as a whole, because Indonesia is very huge. There are always going to be winners and losers.
Right.
And every time there's a new opportunities, some will be more able to adapt, while some will be left behind.
Even within the country.
So like this issue, this digital transformations. One of the great concerns is the digital divides, and the COVID-19 brought that home. when you are forced to work from home and also learn from home. If you work from home, usually you are as professional, you are already able to operate in that world. But if you are school children, some children come from families that have the technologies, but also have parents who are digitally literate, who can help them with the homework and everything. But some live in maybe in areas where they do not even have the coverage, the internet coverage.
Even the coverage, not even the smartphones, the coverage.
They don't have the necessary
infrastructure.
They don't have the technologies, and they don't have the human resources to help. So what's going to happen? The haves will continue to grow. The haves not will continue to be left behind. And this is the one of the most important critical issues of this digital new technologies, just in any technologies. Make sure that it's truly inclusive, and you have to have policy interventions to help those who are more vulnerable.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that this is a great chance for Indonesia to elevate its position in the world stage, to be a key player. How do you think the G20 presidency will help Indonesia, especially in the economic era of, codependency between countries, and with all the energy crisis, food crisis looming in? How do you think Indonesia can be more of an active player, as you say, in the world stage after G20?
Well, Indonesia being an active player in the world stage is a matter of choice. Does President Joko Widodo want to be an active player? Okay. Because he's been criticized for focusing only on certain issues. He's very interested on concrete deliverables, on economy diplomacy. He's interested in G20 or APEC, but he's less interested in wider global fora like the UN. He's never been to the UN General Assembly physically. He's only attended via Zoom. So it's a matter of choice. If he wants to do it, Indonesia already has the capacity, the forums are there, but does it have the interest? At the end of the day, you cannot simply just leave it to the foreign minister. Does the president really want to do it? But secondly, what is most important is, what do we get out of it? Where's the beef? And that happens, and that really depends on to what extent Indonesia is truly prepared in terms of the governance side of it, our rules and regulations, our bureaucracy, our several layers of governments that sometimes contradict each other in terms of policy. But the most important thing is the human resources. Do we have the capacity? When you talk about this digital issues, do we have the human resources, or do we outsource our managers from other countries? Are we able to export? If you look at India, if you go to Silicon Valley, mostly Indians. They are the thinkers behind a lot of this technology reform, and that's why India, is very fast. China too, because they have the capacity. What about us? Where is our Silicon Valley? And that is a major question. So don't only focus on the ceremonial side of it, as President Joko Widodo said.
Although we're good at that.
We're quite good at that. But our educational system, how do our pupils, the students, score in mathematics and science and so on? Because that's the basic foundation for any development in smart economy.
Okay, to get us ready for the future. Basically.
For the golden generation. So how do you think the G20 outcomes will impact these developments in Indonesia in years to come, say in 5 to 10 years?
As I said, it depends on the government, consistency, and consistency. Follow through. Not just have agreements on paper, but look at what are the necessary policies that need to be taken, what investments need to be carried out, what concrete preparations need to be made. So don't leave this, once we finish with this G20,
and then
you file the papers and then you move on. Then of course, it's not going to have much of an impact. In terms of immediate impacts, Bali is enjoying a boom.
Absolutely.
Because
everybody's quite happy.
Because Bali, as you know, is very dependent on its tourism industry. And it's been affected very badly by the pandemic. And now with the G20, there's lots of people coming here, and it's also hopefully that will also show the world that the Indonesia is open back business, and then people will start to travel again.
Absolutely. We spoke with several people during our stay here, and everybody in Bali are excited about the G20, and everybody's talking about it, and everybody's in good spirit, hoping that this would lead to even better future for the economy and the industry of Bali.
Yeah, and we are very glad that we're here to witness it and be a part of it.
History in the making.
Yes. Now, Prof. Dewi, you mentioned about the importance of following through, the follow-up. And we also mentioned that when it comes to organizing events, Indonesia is becoming a master of it on the global stage. Like historically, we've organized events.
APEC.
Yes, even in 1955 with the Asian African Conference, there was also widely praised in Bandung. Yes, APEC Summit twice in 1994 and 2013, as well as numerous smaller ASEAN-level political and economic events. Now, of course, as you said, the true test of the success, I don't want to say success because then it becomes a bit judgmental, but let's just say for argument's sake, the success of the summit is the follow-up measures. How do you think should be the follow-up measures that is adopted by Indonesia to make sure that the G20 summit not only excel on papers, but also practically trigger changes and improvements at home, in the region, and in the world?
The measures.
Yeah.
Okay. So here, firstly, at the domestic level, there's consistency. And that means consistency also for the national level, provincial level, and kabupaten level. So, we have quite rather complex system of government, with decentralizations and so on. And the messaging has to be consistent throughout, and has to be guided throughout. And that's so at the policy level, at the bureaucratic level, bureaucrats need to be certain bureaucrats need to be assigned to watch through the certain policies. And then you have to put your money where your commitment is. You say, we support this, but then you don't fund it. That's not going to work either. So you need. So that means that,
that's commitment.
Exactly.
That's commitment.
That's real commitment.
So we say that Indonesia cares very much about the smart economy, about science technology, but Indonesia has one of the lowest budget for research among the ASEAN countries, let alone the world. It's one of the lowest. So this has been a major issue for Indonesia for a long time. So it means to be consistent. It also means that the wider society needs to keep a close watch. Also, the business community, civil society, think tanks, made to say, hey, Indonesia is already committed to this. How are we going to do this? You cannot just. This is not just a government thing. This is a whole of government, whole of society issues. Because the issues of climate, the issues of digital technology, the issues of health. It involves all of us. So it's not just the issues. It's not just for the political leaders or the bureaucracy, and that means communication, communicating what the outcomes are, and who having a clear ideas of who needs to be doing what, and how are we going to go about it. That's only at the national level. Then don't forget, next year Indonesia is going to be chair of ASEAN. So how do we bring the outcomes of G20 also to benefit the ASEAN region and the Indo-Pacific region as a whole? If you look at the Indo-Pacific regions, then a large numbers of the partners of ASEAN partners are members of the G20. In the East Asia Summit, there's the China, there's United States, there's Japan, South Korea, India, Australia, and New Zealand, and Russia. and other. So Canada is also a dialogue partner. So within the Indo-Pacific, there are a lot of things that we can do. So we can bring some of the outcomes within the G20 and carry them to our Indo-Pacific cooperation centered on ASEAN.
So yet to be seen, but we're excited about the future. So any closing remarks for our viewers about the issue?
Well, as I said, this G20 is very, very important. We cannot emphasize the importance of this commitment, the need to work together so that we can work for our better world. And despite geopolitical tensions, international polarization and so on, I do hope that all of the leaders in G20 will come together and will agree on a common outcome.
Yay.
Great. Prof. Dewi Fortuna, thank you so much for your
being
time.
here. So insightful.
Yes, we learned so much
Super
about you, and
exciting.
we are now even more excited
Yeah.
about the G20 summit and the
Definitely.
result afterwards. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much. It's a
So-
pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll be back after these messages.
Indonesia, the largest archipelago in the world, is located between the Indian Ocean to the south and west, the Timor Sea, and the Arafura Sea to the south, the Bay of Bengal to the northwest, the South China Sea, and some other marginal seas to the north. Indonesia maintains land borders with Malaysia on the island of Borneo, with Papua New Guinea on the island of Papua, and with Timor-Leste on the island of Timor. It shares maritime borders with Australia, India, Palau, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. The country consists of 5 major islands and about 30 smaller groups. There are a total number of 17,508 islands, of which about 6,000 are inhabited. The entire country lies in the southwestern arm of the Ring of Fire and prone to earthquakes and even tsunamis. It ranks third among countries with the most volcanoes, behind the US and Russia. In 2021, Indonesia has a population of more than 271 million people. It is by far the most populous island nation in the world. Influenced for centuries by Indian culture, which brought Hinduism and Buddhism. The archipelago gradually adopted Islam between the 13th and the 16th century.
Proklamasi kami bangsa Indonesia.
The Dutch began colonizing Indonesia in the early 17th century. Imperial Japan occupied the islands from 1942 to 1945. Indonesia declared independence shortly before Japan surrendered to Allied forces in August 1945. Still, it took 4 years of fighting, interrupted negotiations, and UN mediation before the Netherlands agreed to transfer sovereignty in 1949.
17 Agustus 1945 atas nama bangsa Indonesia, Soekarno Hatta.
Timis Indonesia maju.
Saudara-saudaraku sebangsa.
Indonesia is a presidential representative democratic republic with a multi-party system. The president is the head of state, the head of government, and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Executive power is exercised by the government. The executive branch of the government is headed by the president and the vice president. The cabinet ministers are appointed by the president.
Oleh sebab itu, kewaspadaan yang tinggi ini harus setiap hari.
Indonesia is the largest economy in Southeast Asia and one of the emerging market economies in the world. Indonesia is a major exporter of crude petroleum, natural gas, and coal. In 2019, Indonesia was the world's biggest exporter of palm oil. Joko Widodo was born on June the 21st, 1961. He is currently serving his second 5-year term of Indonesian presidency, which will end in 2024. Joko Widodo, commonly called Jokowi, became the first Indonesian president who did not have a military background or belong to one of the country's prominent political families. Jokowi was born and raised in central Java city of Surakarta. He applied himself at school and won admittance to Gajah Mada University in Yogyakarta, from which he graduated in 1985 with a degree in forestry engineering. For several years, he worked for a state-owned pulp mill in the Aceh, later established his own furniture factory in Surakarta. By 2002, he had become a highly successful furniture exporter. When he entered politics, his populist appeal was rooted in part to those humble beginnings. In 2005, Jokowi, as a member of the Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle, or PDIP, won election as mayor of Surakarta. In 2010, Jokowi was re-elected mayor with more than 90% of the vote. He was later ranked as the third best mayor in the world by the International City Mayors Foundation. In 2012, Jokowi was elected as the governor of Jakarta.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Demi Allah, saya bersumpah
In 2014, the PDIP selected Jokowi to be its candidate for the Indonesian presidential election. He was swept to victory with more than 53% of the popular vote, defeating former General Prabowo Subianto. For the first time, Indonesia holds the G20 presidency, a cooperation forum of 20 of the world's major economies. The Indonesian presidency is for 1 year from December the 1st, 2021 to November the 30th, 2022. The handover from Prime Minister Mario Draghi, the Italian presidency, to President Joko Widodo took place on October 31st, 2021 at the G20 summit in Rome, Italy. The Indonesian G20 presidency carries the spirit of Recover Together with the theme Recover Together, Recover Stronger. Indonesia chose this theme since the world is currently under pressure due to the COVID-19 pandemic, requiring joint and inclusive efforts in finding a way out or solutions for recovery. To achieve this target, the Indonesian presidency is focusing on 3 priority sectors as the key for a strong and sustainable recovery, which are strengthening of global health architecture, digital transformation, energy transition. Under the inclusiveness principle, the Indonesian presidency also invites guest countries and international organizations to participate in the G20 events. On various occasions, President Joko Widodo emphasized this inclusiveness is the priority of Indonesian leadership in the G20 to leave no one behind.
Sampai bertemu di Indonesia, terima kasih.
From Indonesia for a better world.
As the world's economy is still strongly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesia, holding the 2022 G20 presidency, encourages world countries to work together to achieve a stronger and more sustainable world recovery. Recover together, recover stronger.
The three main pillars of Indonesia's presidency for the G20 throughout 2022 are namely global health architecture, sustainable energy transition, and digital transformation, with the strategic goal to achieve a developed and a more prosperous global economy in the future.
Be the witness to a series of historical events across the nation.
As we present to you Indonesia's presidency leading to the G20 summit, only on
TVI World. Recover together, recover stronger.
Talking about natural beauty, the island of Bali has a million charms. However, such natural beauty also extends to a group of islands around Bali. One of them is Nusa Penida. Nusa Penida, the charm of a group of islands, offers special attraction to tourists. One of the favorite spots for tourists is the Kelingking Beach. While Pinky Beach is one of the selfie spots much favored by tourists. Yet, access to the island is still limited, only by boats, and people have to queue for the boat service. In order to get to Pinky Beach, it will take approximately 30 minutes of boat ride. The Kelingking or Little Finger Beach is named after the shape of the hill, which looks like a little finger. Bali is synonymous with beaches. There are dozens of beaches in mainland Bali, up to Nusa Penida, that are worth visiting. However, Crystal Bay Beach is very special. Ones must take a trip here when they make a stop at Nusa Penida. The beach not only has bright blue sea water, but it is also clear and clean. That what's beneath the water is clearly visible. You can peek at the fish swimming or hiding in the sponges. Many tourists take the time to swim on this beach because of the clarity of the water. Beach is an incredible tidal cove on Nusa Penida Island. The reason it is called Broken Beach is due to the archway that wraps around the bay, allowing water to flow in and out from the ocean. All around the world, there are unique ways in which the earth has eroded over time. Sometimes Mother Nature leaves us with something quite remarkable. Nusa Penida is definitely one of those places that leaves us in a state of awe at how over millions of years the earth has provided a beautiful spot as it appears before us right now. The arch at Broken Beach has been formed for over many years ago and is a true spectacle now. From above, the cove appears to be almost circular and closed in. However, at eye level, the arch is quite high. Unfortunately, there is no way down into the cave for a refreshing dip, although you can get in the water at Angel's Billabong around the corner. Angel's Billabong is one of the magical spots you can't help but marvel at. A crystal clear tide pool cascades into the ocean on the east coast of Nusa Penida. Out in that ocean, manta rays cruise the coast at leisure. As with all tidal pools, you need to arrive at the right time of day. If you visit Angel's Billabong during high tide, you will experience a very different pool than the one you see in photos. The crystal clear water allows you to see the patterns and textures beneath the surface. It is a highly photographic spot on Nusa Penida because of its unique landscape. Uluwatu Temple, or Pura Luhur Uluwatu, is regarded as one of the 6 most important temples in Bali, along with Pura Besakeh. Inscriptions say that Uluwatu Temple was instigated by Empu Kunturan, a Majapahit monk who also participated in establishing several other important temples in Bali, like Pura Sakanan in Denpasar, about 1,000 years ago. According to Archaeological Survey of India, the remains found at the site proves the temple is made out of a group of stones that came into existence around the 10th century. When visiting Uluwatu area, will be entertained by a typical dance from Bali called the Kecak dance. Kecak dance is a traditional art, a type of dance mixed with drama that is typical of Bali. The dance describes the wayang story, especially the Ramayana story, which is performed with the art of movement and dance. This Kecak dance is one of the most famous traditional arts in Bali. Apart from being a cultural heritage, Kecak dance is also one of the attractions for tourists who came to visit. Kecak dance is usually called Jat dance or fire dance. This dance is a mass entertainment performance dance that depicts the art of acting and is not supported by musical instruments or gamelan. However, it is only supported by a chorus of about 70 male dancers lining up in a circle, wearing a checkered cloth covering the shape of a chessboard. This dance is very sacred. It can be seen from dancers who walked on fire, but because of their skill, are safe from the fire's scorching heat. The Ramayana story was chosen by Uluwatu Kecak dance to be a play. The story tells of a very wise king named Sang Ramadewa who was trying to save his consort named Dewi Sinta, who was kidnapped by a very evil giant king named Ravana. The long and very dangerous journey was taken by Ramadewa, accompanied by his younger brother Laksamana. It is also told when King Ravana kidnapped Dewi Sinta, on his way, he was stopped by Sang Jatayu, a Garuda bird who was a friend of Sang Ramadewa. When Jatayu found out the woman who was being kidnapped by Ravana was a consort of his best friend Sang Ramadewa, the bird Jatayu tried to save the empress. However, because Ravana's supernatural powers overpower Jatayu's, Jatayu can be defeated. In the next part, the journey of Sang Ramadewa, accompanied only by his younger brother Laksamana, then meets Hanuman, a warlord of the monkey army, nephew of a monkey king called Sugriva. Because of one felt indebted to Ramadewa, the monkey army led by warlord Hanuman and King Sugriva was willing to help Sang Ramadewa to reclaim his consort. Because of his magic, the white monkey Hanuman was able to infiltrate the palace of King Ravana and then met Dewi Sinta. With his magical powers, the white monkey Hanuman then burned the palace of King Ravana, which in the Kecak dance was illustrated with a fire dance. Hanuman is then captured and set on fire by Ravana's soldiers, all of whom were giants. Hanuman's struggle in helping Ramadewa to get his consort back becomes a very interesting story. In the dance performance, several other interesting characters also appear, as the characters are performed by a young group of people from the Pecatu community who are so graceful in presenting their respective characters. Apart from being a cultural heritage, this Kecak dance is one of the attractions for tourists who came to visit to the island. In Bali, almost all regions have their own Kecak dance group. In its development, Kecak dance is also experiencing developments, both in terms of performances, the number of dancers, stories, and plays being performed. This is done as an effort from artists so that the Kecak dance show continues to be of high demand and known by a wider community.
we're back again on G20 Leaders Summit with your anchor, Uli Herdi, and my partner.
I'm Siska Becker. We're excited to continue the coverage of the G20 Leaders Summit.
Indeed.
And now we're going to have another insightful dialogue with not one guest, but two guests.
Absolutely. So Indonesia's G20 presidency has discussed a wide range of financial and non-financial issues since early this year. And all the working groups in both finance and Sherpa tracks have produced a number of initiatives to be taken to the G20 Leaders Summit to be included in the Leaders Declaration. Now here we have the opportunity to talk to our two experts. The first we have Bapak Bambang Brojonegoro, former chairman of the National Development Planning Agency, or Bappenas. Hello, sir. Thank you for coming here. And also we have joining us today, Bapak Jose Rizal Damuri, a senior economist at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, of course, to share their views on the outcome of the Indonesia G20 presidency. Thank you for being here, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we just go right into our question list. Let's dive in. And we might also have surprise live feeds from the venue as the world leaders are now actually concluding lunch. I think we have some live feed right now.
Yes, it's concluding lunch and everybody's waiting for probably briefings.
Yes.
And people are taking turn to show up along with all delegates. And while doing that, let's talk about some interesting topics.
Okay, now the first question goes to both of you. We would love to know your point of view. Amidst unprecedented economic and geopolitical challenges, the G20 highlights the importance of strengthening the international financial architecture. Now, Pak Bambang and Pak Jose, can you both share your views? Why the weakness of the global financial system at present, and why does it need further improvement?
Yeah, the G20 forum itself was established at the very first time because at that time the global economy has concern regarding the financial stability, especially after 2008 global financial crisis. But then today, of course, there is no so-called major problem in the financial sector. In fact, the problem is more on the what we call real sector.
Okay.
Real sector.
One, because we are trying to recover from the pandemic. And secondly, of course, there are concerns about our preparedness to the pandemic. Of course, we don't expect the pandemic will happen sometimes in the future, but we have to anticipate. That's why one of the agenda from Indonesia G20 presidency is trying to set up or trying to improve, like what you said, the international financial architecture, especially for health financing. And this is not just for general health financing, but specifically for pandemic preparedness. And so far, we have to admit, there is no global scheme for this kind of financing. Usually it depends on the action from WHO that has a very good program. Unfortunately, they don't have source of funding, or sometimes coming from the multilateral development banks like World Bank, ADB. They have funding, but they don't have good programs regarding the pandemic preparedness. So hopefully with the Indonesian initiative, the platform that will combine these two resources will give significant impact, especially for the future. And certainly it will create some kind of certainty that whenever the pandemic comes, at least human being is ready to deal with that.
Okay. We just got information that for our viewers, when we're seeing on screen at the moment, this is the after lunch.
Yes.
For the delegates from every country that is here for the G20. And here we can see the delegation also with the President Joko Widodo is now walking towards another venue.
Yes, I think they're having a stroll after lunch. Always a good idea.
Beautiful day in Nusa Dua.
Must have been quite a big lunch because after this they have many things to discuss.
Right.
So we'll be waiting for more updates.
And continue with our own discussion.
Yes, indeed.
So, Pak Yose, what's your take on the global health architecture?
Global health architecture. Yes, I think I agree with Pak Bambang that the crisis that happens throughout 2.5 years or 3 years it was different with than the other crises in the past. Normally, crisis came from the financial sectors, but now the crisis come from the health sector. This is a really new experience,
although related,
actually, for the world. We haven't really seen a big pandemic like that since 100 years ago. But now we just realized that we need to do something more in the preparations for the future pandemic that might come again and again. And I think one of the problem is the financing for health infrastructure, for health research and developments, for examples. So one of the deliverables from G20 this year is the setup of the financial intermediary fund for pandemic preparedness. I think this is a really a breakthrough, a really significant actions that Indonesia managed to take up during the presidency. And hopefully with the setup of this funding, although it's still small currently, but it can be a basis for our preparations for the next health issues.
Absolutely. And Indonesia is now coming forward as the presidency with the voice of also underdeveloped countries to be able to access that fund for future needs.
Yes, the policy of inclusivity. I think it's one of the main taglines. Okay, so we were just receiving news. Actually, this is just, they're just going to lunch now.
They're going to a lunch break at the moment.
So it's going to be some time for us to wait for them to finish the lunch session and then to go back to their discussion. Okay, now going back to our discussion, I want to switch gear now and talk about one of the attending member countries of G20, USA. President Joe Biden is attending. We're very excited, of course, to see how the USA will take its stance on global issues that are facing the world right now. And from the economic point of view, lots of people are saying that they should talk about the high interest rate policy adopted by the United States Central Bank that has caused a severe financial problem in many countries. And it has slowed the global economic growth. What do you think of this, Pak Bambang?
Yes, related to what I mentioned a few minutes ago, that the current problem in the global economy is more on what we call the real sector, not specifically on the financial sector. But to solve the problem in real sector, of course, there has to be intervention from financial policy, in this case, the monetary policy. And we know after the recovery, unfortunately, the spike of demand in many advanced economy, developed economy like US, Western Europe, is not balanced by the ability of supply side to anticipate the spike of demand. And of course, there is a disruption in supply chain that will result in higher inflation, because if you have shortage of supply with the excessive demand, then certainly the price will increase. The high inflation happens, and it's quite unprecedented that US, for example, has inflation 8%, 9%, UK, almost the same, different countries in Europe, while countries like us, for example, Indonesia, has inflation around 5 to 6%. Usually it's the other way around, the developed economy used to have inflation much lower than the developing economy. So, of course, US in this case has to take action, because they cannot let the inflation to be that high that will reduce their purchasing power. And the only instrument they have is from the monetary side. And if you are a Federal Reserve Governor, the only tool you can implement is to increase the rate, the Fed rate, until they feel that that certain rate or targeted rate will be able to reduce the pressure on the inflation, meaning that inflation hopefully will be declining. But of course, with this kind of situation, this is monetary action, while the problem in real sector is a little bit different. It's not about the demand is too high. Yes, the demand is high because this is after pandemic. But the problem is the supply cannot anticipate. And of course, the higher interest rate will force other countries, especially developing economy, to adjust. They have to increase the interest rate, or if they don't really increase the interest rate, then there is a threat to the weakening of their currency. So what happened today is actually strong US dollar against other currencies in the world.
Is that the only way that is feasible for the
US? For the US, yes.
Because that's the only way that is feasible.
From the real sector perspective, I mean, their economy already full market mechanism.
So their hands are basically tied, so they have to do this.
Yeah, they have to do that, especially if you are Federal Reserve Governor, because you have some kind of inflation target, right? So if the inflation target is still, beyond, or still below their expectation, they have to use any instrument available. And unfortunately, the Fed rate hike.
With the domino effect to other countries.
Yes, of course.
With the US being such an influential country, then it goes without saying everything the US does when it comes to monetary
policy. The biggest economy in the world, right?
So
the strongest currency in the world.
So it's inevitable at the moment.
Okay. Now, Pak Yose, from your point of view, is there any way the G20 members can formulate to ensure somehow, maybe it's impossible because of the interconnectedness of the countries in the world right now, but is there a way to ensure that monetary policy in one country will not impact in a negative way
as much
to other countries?
Well, that's actually what G20 tried to aim for this year. Try to have some kind of concerted efforts, concerted actions harmful to other members. It is, of course, necessary for the US to increase their interest rate, but perhaps the US can do it without really giving kind of like a harmful effect to other countries. That's what actually Indonesia tried to propose. Unfortunately, the war in Ukraine actually really make the situations totally disrupt everything. We know that there was a disruptions in the supply side because of the pandemic, but the war basically disrupt everything else, including also the recovery. And then it becomes unbearable for many countries, including also the US, to prevent or to avoid necessary interest rate increase. So at the first place, G20 try to have this concerted effort. But, unfortunately, the war in Ukraine make the countries no longer can cooperate in that regard. So we've seen that the current situation is a bit out of control, and maybe G20 and Indonesia's presidency is not really successful in trying or to prevent this kind of action. But actually, maybe this is a necessary condition for those developed countries, especially for the US, to increase the interest rate that much.
Interesting. How about blockchain? Is blockchain technology? Can it be a solution to this kind of monetary problem, or
maybe if all the central banks already have a digital currency, or
which they don't at the moment,
when the economy already use this digital currency quite massively, but unfortunately for today, we don't have that luxury. We normally use the digital currency only as an investment platform, or investment investment platforms. Then without significant monetary effect.
So
way too early, Pak.
It's way too early.
Way
Maybe
too early.
like 20 or 25 years. I don't know. But what we need to do, I think the G20 still has a lot of power to maintain the situations not really out of control, and come up with kind of actions going back to the concerted strategy. Although it's a bit late at the moment, but at least we try to maintain the situations under controls and not really harmful to other economies. And basically, the Biden and Xi Jinping meeting last night actually already provide some kind of good news to the market. And then hopefully it would also loosen up a little bit the tensions, because some of the tension basically come from the geopolitical tensions. The disruption that take place since February this year came up from the geopolitical side rather than from the real sectors or the economy itself.
A lot of tensions in the G20 summit this year. But Pak Bambang, if I could follow up with the blockchain technology question, I would love to know what's your view on it. And because right now several central banks are conducting cross-border pilot projects. Do you think it's a viable solution? Will it work in Indonesia? What do you think?
That's why they do the so-called pilot project. Because if you are a central banker, then you will be very cautious or quite conservative when it comes to the digital currency.
By nature, Pak?
By nature. Because, as a traditional central banker, you are trying to set.
Bambang, excuse us, please. I think we need to go to the live feed because Pak Jokowi, as we speak right now, is addressing.
President of the IOC, Mr. Thomas Bach, and the second President of FIFA, Mr. Gianni Infantino. Now I would like to invite Mr. Thomas Bach to deliver his speech. The floor is yours, Mr. Bach.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Joko Widodo, President of the Republic of Indonesia and Chair of the G20 Summit. Your Excellencies, please allow me first of all to thank our gracious host, President Joko Widodo, for the great honor to be able to address you, the world leaders. I applaud him for choosing its motto for this summit, Recover Together, Recover Stronger, which perfectly resonates with our new Olympic motto, Faster, Higher, Stronger, Together. The global pandemic made it crystal clear how important sport is for our physical and mental health. Sport can save lives. This is why the International Olympic Committee is working closely with the World Health Organization to promote healthy and resilient societies through sport. Olympic athletes are central to this as role models for healthy lifestyle. The excellent cooperation with the governments of Japan and China and our close partnership with the WHO were crucial for us to successfully and safely organize 2 editions of the Olympic and Paralympic Games during the height of the pandemic. During these dark times, the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 and the Olympic Winter Games Beijing 2022 gave so many people around the world hope and optimism. The countless messages of appreciation from all walks of life are summed up in an excellent way by WHO Director General Dr. Tedros, who said, "The Olympic Games bring the whole world together in solidarity and in a celebration of hope." We can only bring the whole world together if the athletes from all 206 national Olympic committees can participate at the Olympic Games. This is what the Olympic and Paralympic Games are about. The whole world together in peaceful competition without any discrimination whatsoever. For Tokyo 2020 and Beijing 2022, the challenge to bring the whole world together was the pandemic. Today, the challenge for the Olympic Games are consequences of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Russia's violation of the Olympic Charter by violating the Olympic Truce Resolution adopted unanimously by the United Nations General Assembly. At the same time, we are supporting the athletes and members of the Ukrainian Olympic Committee everywhere with all our solidarity. But in contrast to the far too many other wars and conflicts in our world, regarding this war, some governments started to decide which athletes would be allowed to participate in international sports competitions and which athletes not. They did, and they do so, purely on political grounds. They want to decide which athlete can now qualify and finally compete at the Olympic Games Paris 2024. If sport becomes, in this way, just another tool to achieve political goals, international sport will fall apart. Because it is the very essence of international sport that decisions about participation and results of athletes have to be based purely on the sporting merit of an athlete. If, however, this kind of politicization of sport becomes the norm, it will be impossible for sport to be such a unifying force. We need the participation of all athletes who accept the rules, even and especially if their countries are in confrontation or at war. A competition between athletes from only like-minded states is not a credible symbol of peace. In this age of division, our role is clear: to unite the world and not to deepen divisions. To live up to this unifying mission, the IOC must be politically neutral. To allow future hosts to welcome the best athletes of the entire world, regardless of political conflicts, I appeal to you, the world leaders, to support this political neutrality. France, Italy, the United States of America, and Australia are the next Olympic hosts. In at least 8 G20 countries, there is already now declared interest in hosting future Olympic and Paralympic Games. This is why I humbly ask you, give us this opportunity to contribute to peace and understanding through sport. Support the autonomy of sport as you have done so previously in so many UN resolutions and declarations. There are not many occasions when all humankind can set aside our differences and come together in peace. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, the Olympic spirit is the most important symbol of peace in today's world. Let us not abandon this precious unifying mission of the Olympic and Paralympic Games in a time when the world needs more solidarity and peace. As you, the G20 leaders, are shaping the new post-pandemic world order, I am very grateful that I can personally ask you today to support this unifying mission of the Olympic Games, and I appeal to you to express this support in a G20 statement as you deem appropriate. In this Olympic spirit, of solidarity and peace, I thank you for your kind consideration. I reiterate the call to you, to the world leaders, that I made already at the opening and closing ceremonies of the Olympic Winter Games 2022. Give peace a chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas Bach. Our second speaker is Mr. Gianni Infantino, the President of FIFA. Mr. Infantino, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, dear President Widodo. Thank you for hosting us in your beautiful, beautiful country. Dear President, dear heads of states and governments, dear delegates, dear friends, I want to speak to you about the one topic which I believe all of you here will agree on. Football. Football is truly unique, and football unites the world. FIFA is an organization of 211 countries, more than the United Nations, and we bring football to the world. Last month we were in India for the girls under-17 World Cup, which Spain won. Next year we will return to Indonesia for the boys under-20 World Cup. And we unite the world through football. We encourage countries to come together to co-host events and World Cup. As such, next year we will be in Australia and New Zealand for the Women's World Cup. And then Canada, Mexico, and United States for the Men's World Cup in 2026. But coming to the present, in 5 days' time, the 2022 FIFA World Cup will kick off in Qatar. It is the first major tournament after the pandemic. It is the first time it will be played in the Middle East as well. And I can assure you that Qatar and FIFA have prepared everything to ensure everyone is welcome for a big celebration, and you are obviously all most welcome. And it must be said as well that Qatar made significant reforms over the last few years, also thanks to the World Cup. As a consequence of that, for example, hundreds of thousands of workers enjoy better conditions than some years ago. So 3 million fans will fill the stadiums, and 5 billion people, more than half of the world population, will watch the games on TV. Entire countries will come to a standstill. Now, dear leaders, you are, of course, representing the largest economies in the world. So let me say one word about economics and football. Because you might not know that the global football GDP is almost $300 billion. And whilst 90% of the fan base of football is outside of Europe, 70% of this global football GDP is produced within Europe. So just imagine the potential for the global economy if the rest of the world would produce even half of what Europe generates in relative terms, and its impact on their respective GDPs all over the world. This would add another 200 or 300 billion in global football GDP. It would add 3 to 4 million jobs for a global football GDP of $500 billion or more US dollars, and this would contribute certainly to narrowing the income gap and growing global wealth, which are yours and also FIFA's priority. But of course, football is, as you all know, much more than just an economy. Football is also much more than just a sport. It has a huge social impact. You all know what football means to your people, to your countries. It is about passion, it is about inclusion, it is about tolerance, it is about non-discrimination, and it is about education. Football is an investment in our children for our future. And football, of course, as sports, unites the world. And because football unites the World Cup is an occasion to bring people together in peace, enjoy something deeply needed in the turbulent times we live in. 7 months ago in Doha, at the occasion of the World Cup draw, when the world was watching, I made a plea for peace on behalf of the global football community. Today, 5 days before the start of that World Cup, I reiterate that plea. Football is a force for good. Of course, we are not naive to believe that football can solve the world's problems. For this, you are there. We know that our main focus as a sports organization is and should be sports. But because football unites the world, this particular World Cup, with 5 billion people watching it, can be the trigger for a positive gesture, for a sign or a message of hope. Dear leaders, Russia hosted the last World Cup in 2018. Ukraine is bidding to host the World Cup in 2030. Maybe that the current World Cup starting in 5 days can really be that positive trigger. So my plea to all of you is to think on a temporary ceasefire for 1 month for the duration of the World Cup, or at least the implementation of some humanitarian corridors or anything that could lead to the resumption of dialogue as a first step to peace. You are the world leaders. You have the ability to influence the course of history. Football and the World Cup are offering you and the world a unique platform of unity and peace all over the world. So let's take this opportunity to do everything we can to start putting an end to all conflicts. Thank you very much. And this is the official ball of the World Cup. Every one of you will receive such a ball with your name on it. So make sure you get it. And in the meantime, if you don't mind, I would like to ask everyone to sign maybe this particular ball, and then together with President Widodo, we can decide what we do of it. Thank you for your attention, and have a great day, and thank you for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Infantino. Sports is...
So there was history in the making, I
Yes.
believe, when we just saw the speeches from Thomas Bach, president of the IOC, which he spoke about political neutrality, and also Gianni Infantino, president of FIFA, and now we're going back to the live feed.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the session.
It seems there's been some technical
Yes.
difficulties, but it was very exciting to see the world leaders in such a relaxed state.
Yeah, in the majestic bamboo apurva.
Yes.
You know, apurva in Sanskrit means one of a kind or never been precedented. So, just in tune with the spirit of the G20, and we hope that this assembly can create something positive to the world.
Yes.
Which brings us to our discussion today. We were talking about one of the new technology that we were discussing about blockchain, I believe.
Yes, Pak Bambang was expressing his point of view on this technology. Pak Bambang, please continue.
If you are in the position in the central bank, and of course, one of the main responsibility is trying to maintain the inflation rate.
Yeah.
And you have to do that by creating some kind of equilibrium balance between the money supply and money demand. So when there is a possibility of digital currency, I think everybody is excited. central bank is excited.
Okay.
Why? Because if the digital currency has been in operational and can be well accepted by everybody, then I believe it will trigger, better and higher transaction. Transaction will be much smoother, and then everybody will feel that doing the cross-border trade will be much easier. So of course it will help in improving the global economic growth. But of course, the job is to maintain the balance between supply and demand. Is not an easy one.
Yeah.
That's why when you have the digital currency, it's kind of experiment.
Okay.
You have to make sure that everything will work well. That's why the pilot project is very necessary. But I believe if the pilot project goes well, then there should be no hesitancy from the central bank, at least few central banks, trying to operationalize the digital currency.
Is there any risks? About...
Yeah, there is, of course. I mean, if they cannot really control, especially the supply side, the money supply side, then of course they will be struggling to maintain the inflation. And then there will be high inflation rate, there will be interest rate increase that will, of course, affect everybody, capital outflow from developing economy to the developed economy. So we don't want to have that kind of situation. So that's why I think piloting the digital currency is a wise one.
Things are running smoothly.
Yeah.
And,
to make sure there will be no kind of volatility or uncertainty that would come out from the digital currency transaction.
Okay. So from the topic of maintaining global financial stability, we now want to transition to the topic of transitioning to clean energy, because that is one of the key issues that are being discussed in the G20 summit. And when we talk about one of the many crises that are facing the world right now, starting from the pandemic, and then we also have the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, but probably the most existential crisis that we're facing is climate change. And that is one of the fundamental reasons why transitioning to clean energy is so necessary. Now, Indonesia, in its presidency of the G20, highlights the importance of the transition to clean energy in order to reduce carbon emission. But ironic because, of course,
that's costly.
It's costly, and it's unfortunate that in many crises, including the climate change, it is the underdeveloped countries that are hit the most
with that burden.
But it's also most costly to them to transition smoothly to clean energy. Now, how do you see that Indonesia can help the underdeveloped countries, and also to push the developed countries to maybe share the burden more? How do you see the situation?
Okay. First of all, we have to admit that the energy transition process itself is a costly. It's very costly. Why? Because you are trying to shift from the fossil fuel that is, unfortunately, relatively much cheaper than the renewable ones. Of course, some people might argue, no, if you have solar panel, if you have wind turbine, you might produce electricity with the lower cost than the, for example, coal power plant. Of course, that could be the case, but we have to remember that those wind and solar panel are what we call variable renewable energy. So they cannot provide electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It depends on the situation,
the weather,
the weather, and whether there is enough wind power to generate the turbine. So in this case, of course, there has to be special energy transition mechanism, especially, as you mentioned, for not only low-income country, even for developing economy, including Indonesia. So our issue right now is not just about that we have to shift from coal to renewable energy. We are still struggling to find out the proper financing mechanism. And then we also need to find out what kind of technology that will be appropriate to support this transition. That's why I think the initial plan of Indonesia toward net zero emission will be for 2060. Yeah. Of course, 2060 is still 40 years from now, but I believe if we can do some kind of early retirement from the fossil fuel, that will help, because if we just wait until 2050 or close to 2060, then I'm afraid our transition will not be smooth. And then there has to be many intervention from government to change many policies that will encourage the development of renewable energy and willingness to live or to get out from the fossil fuel.
Okay. Maybe Pak Yose has any insights about that.
I agree with you that the very existential crisis actually, but this is also what you call incremental crisis, the slow moving and maybe also bit by bit crisis that it's different than the pandemic, for example, that we more sudden or the geopolitical tensions that we affect the our life just immediately. This is kind of like the incremental crisis,
like a disease.
So normally people underestimate the risk, underestimate also the impact that would happen. And I agree with you. This is going to be very difficult one. Not only to have a good transmissions, transformations, energy transformation, but also even to increase the awareness, because the awareness is still very low. Pak Bambang mentions about the financing problems, but I think another problems that we have is also on the demand side. The demand for renewable energy, the demand for a cleaner energy, especially in the developing countries like Indonesia. We don't care whether the energy comes from coal or from the
wind turbines or
other
whatever.
fossil fuel, or from wind turbine and from geothermal. What we need, at least for the society, for the business as well, they only care that the energy is sufficient. This is, I think, also another problem. The demand is still low. So how we try to save the demand or increase the demand? Because if the demand is there and the awareness is there, people would be willing to pay even more, to pay higher for the energy. And that might also help support the transitions from the fossil fuels to cleaner energy.
Interesting. Enlighten us, but how did other developed countries created this demand so that changes happen, and probably how can we follow suit in what they're doing?
I think one important thing is, when you are talking about the demand, is of course number one is the price, and number two is the access. Okay, so let's say in the case of Indonesia, when it comes to the price, unfortunately, as I mentioned, if you use the variable renewable energy, especially solar panel and wind, then you need some kind of electricity storage.
Batteries.
These days, battery. These days, the price is a little bit expensive. If you combine the variable renewable energy with the storage,
especially for the initial investment,
initial investment and also the operation.
I see.
Because
the maintenance
the battery has to be there, forever, to ensure the reliability. So when you combine that, the price will be higher than the coal power plant.
I see.
So that's why, as Pak Yose mentioned, people, especially today, still feel don't bother with the source of energy because we prefer the reliability of the electricity supply, and that could be available from the coal rather than the combination between the two, because the price is higher. So that's the price. Number two is the access, actually. Unfortunately, the advantage of fossil fuel, especially diesel and coal, they can be transported to anywhere in the country.
Right.
The source could be in Sumatra or Kalimantan, but the users could be in Papua, could be in Java, could be in any place. They just ship, both the diesel fuel and the coal to the power plant. While when you are talking about renewable energy, usually it's very localized,
Right.
You cannot create hydropower everywhere, and you cannot bring the hydropower from one place to the other.
Yeah.
Similar with the solar panel, similar with the wind, So it's very localized. So it means the challenge about this access is the government from now has to invest more on the transmission, on the grid system to connect, So currently Indonesia doesn't have so-called the national grid.
Right.
We only have Jawa Bali grid, for example. I think in the future, when we are trying to go for the net zero emission, there is no other way than to build national grid. Or we are also hoping that the price of storage will be down. So with the combination of these two, then hopefully the energy transition that should emphasize on sustainability, reliability, and affordability could be happening in Indonesia.
So in a way, that's like a chicken and egg question, Pak. Which one comes first? I mean, the government of Indonesia, especially keen on getting a lot of investors coming to Indonesia to build these infrastructure that are needed to begin the process. But then again, some investors might see our country not as sexy as other countries. Why do you think
I think that's where the government has to be has to enter, to build the basic infrastructure, including also transmission infrastructure. Because as we know that the renewable energy, cleaner energy only has one form, electricity.
Yes.
That means electricity sector has also need to be reformed, including also perhaps the structure of the market, the structure of the industry.
Structure of the market, structure of the industry.
And as well as the infrastructure, basic infrastructure like transmission and grid.
That's the only way to attract foreign investors, to make sure that...
And everything has to be done at the same time?
Yes. I think even before we can attract foreign investors, that means that's the homework for the Indonesian government. But Pak Bambang, based on your experience as the former chairman of the National Development Planning Agency, or Bappenas, during the discussions of how to approach this issue to clean energy transition for Indonesia, what is actually the most suitable and less costly renewable energy for Indonesia, so we can transition quicker and faster?
Yeah, I think there are two ways. Of course, I will go back to the three principles of energy transition, as I just mentioned: sustainability, reliability, and affordability. And especially for a country like us, we are still in the middle income country. So affordability is still very important. Maybe not relevant for countries like US, Western Europe. That's why I think at the beginning, one of your question, why the energy transition in developed country already work quite smoothly, because they have the purchasing power. The people have the ability to buy the electricity or to pay for electricity. While here, of course, the price still determined by the government, and for a reason. The reason is we don't want government will not be able to serve electricity for the people. So my idea is, again, we have to combine the so-called variable renewable energy with what we call the base load, and both of them has to be renewable.
With what, sir?
The base load. The base load means the power plant that can operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I see. Okay.
That now could be provided by coal power plant or gas power plant. So
to ensure the reliability aspect.
Reliability, yes, correctly. And then, of course, to deal with the future, I think my idea is for a small grid, for the area like the remote area or some islands in Indonesia, maybe the best combination will be renewable energy that based on the biomass. Combined with the either wind or with the solar, depends on the weather situation. Why biomass?
So biomass from agricultural.
Biomass from the waste or from agriculture, some agriculture material. That can serve as the base load that I mentioned. Because they can, as long as the feedstock, the supply is available, they can operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, combined with the peaker, I mean the variable renewable energy, either from the sun, from solar, or from the wind. That's for the smaller grid. For the bigger system, of course, you need to combine solar, wind, that basically variable, with maybe hydropower plant, which can also serve as a base load. And also, biomass may be too small, but you can also use geothermal.
Geothermal.
Yeah, geothermal. I mean, Indonesia has one of the biggest reserve, but we haven't really explored it. I mean, I understand why, because it's still very much expensive, to do the exploration. But it can serve as a good base load. So by combining that, then hopefully we can have a national grid, that will provide electricity 100% clean and renewable.
And you think we're going to that direction? And
as long as there are two requirements. One, we really invest on the grid system, because, for example, the best solar farm could be in East Nusa Tenggara, given the fact that they are drier than, let's say, the western part of Indonesia.
So maintenance is probably...
And also the quality of the supply of electricity supply will be better. But then the demand will be more in Java, or in Sumatra, in the western part.
So we need the grid.
So we need the grid. We need the submarine cable between islands of East Nusa Tenggara and Java, for example. So that will be one big requirement. And second one, of course, we need to create the electricity storage system that will provide affordable costs. So we hope, I mean, still now 2022, we hope by 2050 or 2060, the electricity storage will be more affordable. I mean, the cost will be lower. Or there is another technology to do the storage called pump storage.
Pump storage.
Basically, you have to provide two reservoirs in different height. So during the day, for example, when the sun is still strong, then the power from the solar cell or the wind, if the wind works, can be used for bringing the water from the down to the up.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So pumping all the water,
and then during the night,
it goes back down.
It goes back
as
down
a hydropower.
and will create electricity.
Oh, so interesting.
But again, it needs some kind of significant capital expenditure, and we have to start investing from now, I guess.
Very interesting.
Another potential technology is actually also to change the electricity into materials.
Into materials?
Yeah, because we know that the fossil fuel energy normally comes as a material, and then we turn it into energy. We turn it as electricity. But this is the other way around. So how the energy or electricity that we gather from solar, for example, from wind, or from hydropower, we turn it into materials such as hydrogen, for example. Hydrogen, liquid hydrogen.
Oh, liquid hydrogen.
These liquid hydrogens can be transformed, can be transported to other areas, including also to use it for transportation, for example. This is kind of like a technology that is still developing, of course, and maybe not really at the commercial level, but I think some countries already look at that kind of potential technology, including Japan, for example, already look at this kind of technology, and Indonesia is one of the places where they would carry out some research and development program on that technology.
So still in the R&D phase, I think, but a lot of potential, a lot of challenges. But I understand, Pak Yose, you said now it's how to excite the people with this technology, and you mentioned before it's the lack of awareness and probably just it doesn't impact their direct lives. So that's why there's so less excitement in Indonesia. I mean, one of the crises that is probably more worrisome to a lot of people is the food crisis. The food security that is also one of the main issues that are being discussed by the world leaders right now. And that is also why the G20 agriculture ministers have highlighted the principles of an open, fair, and non-discriminatory agricultural trade. Pak Yose, why do you think this kind of initiatives is taken by the G20 agricultural ministers?
Yes, because most of the food crisis in the world, it's not really because of there is no food,
right?
Because mostly because of the distribution and access. So the availability is actually sufficient, but the distribution is not and access is disturbed. And that's what happens normally during the crisis. Even during the pandemic, early times of the pandemic, we've seen a lot of countries, especially for the producing countries of food, they erected some kind of barriers to export and to distribute food products because they would like to secure first their own domestic market, their own domestic populations. But that create a lot of uncertainty to the food market. That might also increase the price and also will attract other countries to erect the same barriers by not allowing the export of food product. That's why I think that's really a good call to have an open market and free market for agriculture and also food supply. But I think it should also be the call from the trade minister, not only the agriculture minister. Because this is the domains, or it's mostly under the domains of trade, not really agriculture, that basically mostly deal with the productions of the food.
The World Trade Organization, do you think there's, their roles, their relevancies in these modern times? What do you think?
Especially during the looming food crisis.
I think they still have a lot of relevancy. Like for example, first, the WTO has a good database for that trade policy, the trade policy that ban export for food, and by having that kind of database, maybe they can also provide some kind of solutions and persuade those countries not to impose the regulations or not to impose the restrictions too much. It is still understandable for those countries to have that kind of restrictions, but it might we also or the WTO might also come. WTO members might also come with the solutions with a way that minimize the harm, the dangers of having food insecurity.
What do you think, Pak Bambang? Will WTO still have a key role in arranging world trade? And maybe specifically, I think in the G20 Leader Summit, they're going to touch on the palm oil restrictions. What are your views on that, Pak Bambang?
I think first of all, WTO has to be there, especially to avoid the possibility of excessive non-tariff barrier. And of course, their emphasis would be if you want to limit import, for example, or you want to support the export, then use the tariff. Tariff policy is there. Of course, they put certain, threshold to make sure that you are not overprotecting. So the idea is not to do overprotection. But then, of course, if, let's say, two countries or several countries have dispute, of course, WTO has to be there in order to resolve the dispute itself. So it will come to the issue of the palm oil. I think, in my humble opinion, looking at the palm oil issue for quite some time since I was in government, even before. Then the trade war or the discussion actually is more on the trade war rather than the issue of the sustainability that some countries, especially in Europe, trying to raise.
Are you saying the sustainability issue is just a talking point instead?
Yeah, sustainability will be used as an entry point. Of course, to trying to to reduce the potential of palm oil coming to the Europe. We know that if palm oil is there, then they will compete head to head with the rapeseed, sunflower, and other types of the so-called the oil. And don't forget, during the Russia-Ukraine war, there was period in which there is a shortage of the food oil, in Europe, because Ukraine happens to be one of the major producer, major exporter, I think, of that kind of food oil, vegetable oil. So it means that actually to solve the problem, palm oil could be a solution. But I think from Indonesia perspective, to resolve this problem, not only we are trying to bring our case to WTO. More importantly, the sustainability aspect of sustainability aspect of the palm oil has to be ensured. We have to be disciplined to make sure that everybody, especially outside Indonesia, understand that Indonesia already tries very hard to impose the sustainability from the plantation process until the processing process. So then we can convince others, look, this is just a trade war. This is just price war maybe, but it's not about the sustainability, because if the sustainability issue becomes the issue, then it will be very hard for us to bring palm oil into the global level.
Have we done enough though on the sustainability issue to ensure the Europeans that you don't have anything to worry about, and when they come with that entry point, then it becomes a non-argument?
In my observation, there have been several efforts to, let's say, first to set the standard for sustainability in palm oil, from the plantation up to the processing. And secondly, there are already kind of audit regarding some companies' performance when they are, doing the business with the palm oil. So of course, there could be cases. So maybe what we need to do is to make sure every players in palm oil will follow that kind of sustainability, and they are open for any audit or for any investigation. Because if someone is suspecting us, the only way is to deal with the investigation rather than closing or hiding the data.
It's interesting. Hopefully in this summit we can reach some sort of resolution, about the palm oil issue.
Indeed. Let's shift gear into a digital economy. Digital economy. So,
one of the strengths of Indonesia is actually its digital economy. So it's very exciting to talk about it.
Indeed. So the ministerial meeting in Bali in September produced concrete results, include digital connectivity and post-COVID-19 recovery, also digital literacy and also digital skills, and also cross-border data flow. So when we talk about digital connectivity, why is it so important in supporting the economic recovery?
I mean, first of all, during the pandemic, we have been helped very significantly by the existence of digital technology. So at least we can still do some activities without getting to meet each other, right? So it helps very a lot. And fortunately, it has created some kind of new lifestyle and new trend in which people don't mind if, let's say, I have to meet you, but you can only have a meeting online with me. So in the past, there could be an insult, if you say, no, I don't want to meet you and I just want to see you through the Zoom, for example. But today, it's common, And actually, it will help a lot. It helps in terms of efficiency, productivity, and don't forget, you mentioned in the beginning about inclusivity.
Yeah.
Digital technology really helps inclusivity. So if you are asking me what will be the importance of digital economy to the digital technology to the economy, my number one answer, it helps inclusivity.
It's
for SME, small medium enterprise, and also for crowdfunding, to help someone. Many things, including peer-to-peer lending. So there are many benefits for that. And then, thankfully, our population now is a younger population. So they are really accustomed and they are really, adoring the digital technology. So they become, the big users of digital. And that will accelerate the digital economy itself in Indonesia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I just got information that now what's happening on the Apurva Kempinski.
Yes.
All the head of states are posing for a photo op together. Again, history in the making at Apurva Kempinski.
It's the G20 family photo.
Oh, this is
family photo.
Yeah.
It's so heartwarming, yeah?
Okay, we see there President Jokowi.
Yeah.
Just next to President Erdogan.
Yeah.
Who just received bad news, unfortunately, from home, from Turkey, with the bomb incident. Yeah. President of South Korea.
Yeah.
Is also there.
I think Indonesia has been a great host, yeah?
A lot of praises, a lot of really, really positive reviews, including from the Secretary General of the United Nations, who held a press conference last night. He gave really flying colors to Indonesia as being a really great host for the G20 summit and also the side events preluding the summit itself. And he also mentioned how happy he is that Indonesia will be the chairman of ASEAN next year. He hopes that Indonesia will keep on being an active player in the international stage and can help mediate peace between countries that are in conflict, including the issues in Myanmar. So a lot of good reviews and a lot to look forward to for Indonesia.
Definitely.
So we see more world leaders.
Yes, there was 5 presidents.
Yes.
Who did the family photo op, family picture together. And now let's go back to our discussion.
The tag MIKTA. It's Mexico, Indonesia,
Korea,
Turkey, and Australia.
Okay.
This is a kind of like new BRICS.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
Can you tell us more, Pak Yose?
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of messages that has been broadcasted verbally and also non-verbally for the world.
They are basically the emerging economies at the moment.
Okay.
Right. It's an exciting time, yeah?
Yeah.
Exciting time.
Yeah.
So we were talking about digital economy, I believe.
Yes, digital economy and how it breaks so many barriers. And one of the key issues, inclusivity can also be reached through digital economy. And maybe right now, actually, the most pressing issue is how digital economy can help countries, including Indonesia and developing countries especially, to recover quickly after being so hit by the economic slowdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. What do you think, Pak Yose?
Yeah, I think it's very important to discuss about it because digital economy has a very high potential actually to improve or to support the recovery. Like my institute, CSIS, has conducted a lot of studies on digital economy and to look at how it contributes to the Indonesian economy. And then we found out that digital economy, if can be conducted properly, appropriately, then it might create additional 1% growth in the 2040. And it would help, of course, to support Indonesia in order to reach the potentials of being the high-income countries, including also to support the economic recovery today, as we know that the COVID actually already shift our attentions to and our attitude toward this digital economy. But I think one thing have to be highlighted here. Digital economy opens up opportunities for inclusiveness, but it doesn't really come up automatically, because many also still needs to do not really have good skills or good capacity to enter the online world. That means one of the issues that in the G20 is about digital skills and literacy. I think this is quite important issue, because digital skills and literacy that do not really come up automatically. It has to be supported by the government, by the business sector as well. It has to be funded and it has to be promoted. And I think that G20, one of the G20 deliverables is quite important for the digital economy improvements in the future.
I believe Pak Bambang has to move on to his next agenda.
Pak Bambang, we understand that you have a packed schedule for the rest of the day. So once again, we really thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. You're very generous with your time and your expertise. We truly appreciate that. And we wish you all the best for the remaining of the summit and the event. Thank you, Pak Bambang.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pak Bambang. Yeah. So we'll be back after these messages with more information, more discussion, and more news.
Indonesia, the largest archipelago in the world, is located between the Indian Ocean to the south and west, the Timor Sea, and the Arafura Sea to the south, the Bay of Bengal to the northwest, the South China Sea, and some other marginal seas to the north. Indonesia maintains land borders with Malaysia on the island of Borneo, with Papua New Guinea on the island of Papua, and with Timor-Leste on the island of Timor. It shares maritime borders with Australia, India, Palau, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. The country consists of 5 major islands and about 30 smaller groups. There are a total number of 17,508 islands, of which about 6,000 are inhabited. The entire country lies in the southwestern arm of the Ring of Fire and prone to earthquakes and even tsunamis. It ranks third among countries with the most volcanoes, behind the US and Russia. In 2021, Indonesia has a population of more than 271 million people. It is by far the most populous island nation in the world. Influenced for centuries by Indian culture, which brought Hinduism and Buddhism. The archipelago gradually adopted Islam between the 13th and the 16th century.
Proklamasi kami bangsa Indonesia.
The Dutch began colonizing Indonesia in the early 17th century. Imperial Japan occupied the islands from 1942 to 1945. Indonesia declared independence shortly before Japan surrendered to Allied forces in August 1945. Still, it took 4 years of fighting, interrupted negotiations, and UN mediation before the Netherlands agreed to transfer sovereignty in 1949.
17 Agustus 1945 atas nama bangsa Indonesia, Soekarno Hatta.
Indonesia is a presidential representative democratic republic with a multi-party system. The president is the head of state, the head of government, and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Executive power is exercised by the government. The executive branch of the government is headed by the president and the vice president. The cabinet ministers are appointed by the president.
Oleh sebab itu, kewaspadaan yang tinggi harus setiap hari.
Indonesia is the largest economy in Southeast Asia and one of the emerging market economies in the world. Indonesia is a major exporter of crude petroleum, natural gas, and coal. In 2019, Indonesia was the world's biggest exporter of palm oil. Joko Widodo was born on June the 21st, 1961. He is currently serving his second five-year term of Indonesian presidency, which will end in 2024. Joko Widodo, commonly called Jokowi, became the first Indonesian president who did not have a military background or belong to one of the country's prominent political families. Jokowi was born and raised in central Java city of Surakarta. He applied himself at school and won admittance to Gajah Mada University in Yogyakarta, from which he graduated in 1985 with a degree in forestry engineering. For several years, he worked for a state-owned pulp mill in the Aceh, later established his own furniture factory in Surakarta. By 2002, he had become a highly successful furniture exporter. When he entered politics, his populist appeal was rooted in part to those humble beginnings. In 2005, Jokowi, as a member of the Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle, or PDIP, won election as mayor of Surakarta. In 2010, Jokowi was re-elected mayor with more than 90% of the vote. He was later ranked as the third best mayor in the world by the International City Mayors Foundation. In 2012, Jokowi was elected as the governor of Jakarta.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Demi Allah, saya bersumpah.
In 2014, the PDIP selected Jokowi to be its candidate for the Indonesian presidential election. He was swept to victory with more than 53% of the popular vote, defeating former General Prabowo Subianto. For the first time, Indonesia holds the G20 presidency, a cooperation forum of 20 of the world's major economies. The Indonesian presidency is for 1 year from December the 1st, 2021 to November the 30th, 2022. The handover from Prime Minister Mario Draghi, the Italian presidency, to President Joko Widodo took place on October 31st, 2021 at the G20 summit in Rome, Italy. The Indonesian G20 presidency carries the spirit of Recover Together with the theme Recover Together, Recover Stronger. Indonesia chose this theme since the world is currently under pressure due to the COVID-19 pandemic, requiring joint and inclusive efforts in finding a way out or solutions for recovery. To achieve this target, the Indonesian presidency is focusing on 3 priority sectors as the key for a strong and sustainable recovery, which are strengthening of global health architecture, digital transformation, energy transition. Under the inclusiveness principle, the Indonesian presidency also invites guest countries and international organizations to participate in the G20 events. On various occasions, President Joko Widodo emphasized this inclusiveness is the priority of Indonesia leadership in the G20 to leave no one behind.
Sampai bertemu di Indonesia, terima kasih.
We are back in TVRI World for the coverage of the G20 Leader Summit, and we are continuing with our discussion with Pak Yose, the Executive Director of CSIS, who was just telling us about the exciting development when it comes to digital literacy, especially here in the G20 from the CIS. Can you tell us more, Pak?
Oh, yes. This year G20 actually also produced the so-called toolkit for measuring digital skills and literacy. Because we know that the digital skills and digital literacy is very important, especially in order to prepare for our human resources, for our people to be able to reap the benefit from digital technology. Not only on the skill side, the hard skill, but also on the way they use the digital technology, the literacy side. So the first thing in order to improve the situation is that how to know about the level of skills and literacy, and to know about the problem, to know about the issues that have been faced by the economy to improve the digital skill and digital literacy. So that this toolkit actually is designed to answer or to provide that kind of information. So that the countries that use this toolkit can have more information or can have more knowledge about the problems on digital skill and digital literacy. And where we are quite lucky actually in CSIS, because we developments of the toolkits, and the toolkit can be accessed either from the G20 side or from a CSIS website as well.
Okay. Now that aligns perfectly with the inclusivity theme that is trying.
The key issues that everybody's talking about at the moment is also about the global economy. Because a lot of people are saying that it's getting worse. The IMF has estimated that the global economic growth will slow from 3.2% this year to 2.7% next year. So how severe is the global economic slowdown will affect Indonesia?
Well, the global economic slowdown has been going on actually.
For some time.
For some time. The last years, we have a lot of hope to the global economy recovery, but of course, the hope was shut down when we did have the war in Ukraine, and then it disrupted a lot of things, disrupted the economic activities and supply chains. So this is just a beginning actually of the developments, because in order we discuss about the macroeconomic side, in order to deal with the issue, the inflations, central banks actually increase the interest rate. And this interest rate increase has slowed down the economy even further. So in order to stop or in order to halt the inflation, the price that we have to pay is to slow down the economy. And because this comes just right after we are entering the recovery, it means the recovery is also still very far away from us. It's it stopped or it reduced the speed toward the recovery. That's why the global economy would be slowed down quite significantly, not only this year but also throughout next year. And for Indonesia, it would bring significant impact for sure, because Indonesia, although Indonesian economy mostly driven by domestic market, domestic consumptions, which take into account around 60%, almost 60% of the economy. But we still have another 40% coming from the world, coming from the global economy. That means also these 40% would be affected by what happens at the global level. That means we are going to have a significant impact towards our export. Our export mostly on commodities would be affected, but more importantly also on the manufacturing side, because the manufacturing products normally would be the demand can be delayed. It's a non-durable product that people can delay the consumption. So with the global economic slowdowns, it means also our productions might be affected here in Indonesia, especially for the manufacturing sectors. And we also have seen how it affects our export of manufacturing products. But furthermore, the export of commodities might also be affected later on, because the demands would be declining, and currently those commodities still having higher price, like palm oil or like coal and many other metal and minerals commodities might also be affected and has a price decline.
Okay, so on a global stage, the global economy, it's a bit of a gloom and doom situation. But domestically in Indonesia,
like that word, but gloom and doom.
Gloom and doom all over the world. But in Indonesia, it's actually the other way around, probably to counter.
There's a little bit of sunshine.
Yeah, to counter the argument that it's going to be really bad. Actually, Finance Minister Sri Mulyani is quite optimistic that the Indonesian economy will grow at 5.3 this year and 5.0 in 2023. Pak Yose, just quickly, do you agree with these numbers? Do you think we can achieve such?
I think we still can have a significant growth even next year. As I mentioned before, we are mostly driven by domestic economy, but we have to pay more attention on the global side, because we have seen so far the declines of demands for our manufacturing products, and then this would disrupt even more of our productions. Mostly for the exported products. And then what we also need to pay more attention is about the inclusiveness as well. How the growth that we already achieved can be also enjoyed by more people, not only towards certain layers of the population, certain groups in the society.
Inclusivity
once again become very important, especially if we have a global economic slowdowns next year and or affect the economy even further.
Okay. All right, Pak Yose, thank you so much for your time
Such a great
and your insights. We are very excited, of course, about the result of the G20 summit, and we wish you all the best and hope you can continue with all the great work that you do with the CIS. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you very much.
Pak. Fantastic discussion.
Yes.
So that was our discussion today with Bapak Yose Rizal Damuri, Senior Economist at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And it's time for me, Uli Hardian Siska Becker,
Yes.
to recite a little bit, but we'll be back later on.
We'll be back later on, and the coverage of the G20 Leader Summit continues on TVRI World. We have Rahmat Idris and Chok Devi to continue.
Yeah, see you in a bit.
People of the world, we are in jeopardy. Striving times to act in solidarity. Our wish to heal the world, we shall do whatever must be done. We cover together. We cover strong. Reaching up for our children's future destiny. I wish heal the world. Whatever must be done, we cover together. We cover stronger. Navigate the sea of change. We have always overcome hand in hand. We cover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching up for our children's future destiny. Yes, it's from God's history, bringing us ahead. Recover together, stronger. Navigate the sea of change. We have always overcome hand in hand. Recover together. We'll recover stronger. Reaching out for children's future, for children's future destiny.
From Indonesia for a better world.
As the world's economy is still strongly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesia, holding the 2022 G20 presidency, encourages world countries to work together to achieve a stronger and more sustainable world recovery. Recover together, recover stronger.
The three main pillars of Indonesia's presidency for the G20 throughout 2022 are namely global health architecture, sustainable energy transition, and digital transformation, with the strategic goal to achieve a developed and a more prosperous global economy in the future.
Be the witness to a series of historical events across the nation.
As we present to you Indonesia's presidency leading to the G20 summit only on
TVI World. Recover together, recover stronger.
Sekarang kita mulai berdiskusi mengenai isu kesehatan. Saya ingin memulai dengan sambutan pembuka saya. Para pemimpin G20, dunia kita semakin pulih dari pandemi COVID-19. Namun, kita tidak boleh lengah.
Must not be complacent. The next health emergency
Muncul kapan saja.
might just happen anytime. This time, the world must be ready.
Kesiapsiagaan kita akan menyelamatkan nyawa dan perekonomian kita.
Preparedness will save our lives and our
G20 harus
economy.
mengambil langkah-langkah nyata dan
G20 needs to take immediate concrete steps.
pertama,
First,
arsitektur kesehatan global harus
global health
diperkuat.
architecture must be strengthened.
Kita perlu WHO yang lebih kuat dan
We
bertaring.
need a stronger and sharper WHO.
Solidaritas dan keadilan harus menjadi ruh
Solidarity and justice
arsitektur kesehatan
must be the
global.
soul of the global health architecture.
G20 telah berhasil membentuk
The
Pandemic
G20
Fund.
has successfully established
diikuti
the
dengan
financial intermediary fund. This must be
agar
followed by
berfungsi
additional
secara
funding
optimal.
contribution in order for it to
Saya
function
mengajak semua
optimally.
pihak
I
berkontribusi.
invite all parties to contribute.
Indonesia telah memberikan komitmen 50
Indonesia
juta
has
dolar.
committed $50 million.
G20 juga harus ikut mengawal
G20
proses pembentukan
must also
traktat
closely guard
pandemi
the process to
Ini
formulate the
penting
pandemic treaty.
untuk
This is
memperkuat
important to strengthen
kesiapsiagaan
preparedness
di tingkat
at
nasional,
the national,
kawasan,
regional,
dan global.
and global levels.
Kedua,
Second,
negara berkembang
developing
harus
countries
diberdayakan sebagai bagian dari
must
solusi.
be empowered as part of the solution.
Kesenjangan kapasitas kesehatan tidak
Gaps in health
dapat
capacity
dibiarkan.
must not be allowed.
Negara berkembang perlu kemitraan yang memberdayakan.
Developing countries need
Negara
empowering
berkembang
partnerships.
harus menjadi
Developing
bagian
countries
rantai pasok
must be
kesehatan
part
global,
of the
termasuk
global health supply
pusat
chain,
manufaktur dan
including
riset.
as centers of
Ini
manufacturing
hanya
and
bisa
research.
terjadi jika
This can only
investasi
happen if
industri kesehatan
investment in the health
ditingkatkan.
industry are increased.
Kerjasama riset dan
Cooperation
transfer teknologi
on research
diperkuat,
and technology
dan
transfer are
akses bahan baku
strengthened,
produksi untuk negara berkembang
as well as access to raw
diperluas.
materials for developing countries are
Selain
widened.
itu, TRIPS waiver harus
Furthermore,
diperluas
TRIPS waiver must
pada
be
semua
expanded
solusi kesehatan,
to all
termasuk
medical solutions,
diagnostik dan terapeutik.
including diagnostic and
WHO juga
therapeutics.
harus merealisasikan komitmennya
WHO must also
terkait
realize
hubs
its commitments
dan spokes
regarding hubs
solusi
and
kesehatan.
spokes for medical
Yang mulia,
solutions.
dunia
Excellencies,
tidak boleh mengulang kesalahan
the world
saat pandemi
must not repeat the
COVID-19.
mistakes made during the
Ini adalah
COVID-19 pandemic.
pelajaran berharga
These
untuk
are valuable
menyiapkan
lessons
dunia
to prepare the world better for a global health emergency.
Never again.
Never
Harus menjadi
again
mantra kita bersama.
must be our shared mantra.
Saya menantikan pandangan dan kontribusi yang
I
mulia
look forward to your
bagi
Excellency's
penguatan
views and
arsitektur
contributions
kesehatan
to
dunia.
strengthen global health
Demikian
architecture.
pengantar dari saya.
That concludes
Terima
my
kasih.
introduction. Thank you.
Yang mulia, selanjutnya
Excellencies,
kita
we
akan mulai
will
dengan
now
diskusi tertutup.
proceed with the closed session.
Karena itu dengan hormat,
Therefore,
saya mohon awak media
I
untuk
respectfully
meninggalkan
request our media
ruangan
colleagues to
pertemuan.
leave the room.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Yang mulia,
Excellencies,
saya sangat mengharapkan dalam diskusi
I
ini
really
kita
hope
dapat
that during
membahas
our discussion we
bagaimana
can
kita
discuss
bekerja
how we
sama
cooperate to
memperkuat
strengthen
arsitektur kesehatan
global health
global.
architecture
Bagaimana rantai pasok kesehatan
and
dapat
how to improve
diperbaiki
health
dengan
supply chain
melibatkan
by
negara
involving developing countries so that developing countries would be able to contribute greater in anticipation of future pandemics.
So we are worlds. You are still watching our special programs coming to you live from the beautiful Bali, Indonesia. We come to you all day long with the full coverage of the G20 Leaders Summit here in Nusa Dua, Bali. Continuing the program today is Muhammad Idris.
And I am Joy who will accompany you to give you the latest information regarding the G20 Leaders Summit. And what we have just seen is the opening remarks for the plenary session, the second plenary session, right, Rahmat? Yeah. The second plenary session that will discuss about health sector, which was just opened by the President of the Republic of Indonesia, Joko Widodo. There are several things that President Jokowi delivered during his remarks. That is global health architecture that must be strengthened, and also the commitment of developing countries to empower partnership regarding in health investment.
Right, working session 2 today for the Leaders Summit of the G20 under Indonesia's presidency highlights the one of the very core priorities proposed by Indonesian government, which is the global health architecture, and the theme health is the very sector that our government is shining a light on. And adding to what Chok Devi has said earlier, that President Joko Widodo, on behalf of the government of the Republic of Indonesia, again emphasized on the importance of the so-called PPR, pandemic preparedness and response. And this has also been an issue that was brought up by a variety of working groups as well as engagement groups. Chodefi, we remember exactly the health working group that has shined a light on the PPR as well. But more than that, the preparedness also includes the ways to finance them.